Hopefully we're live. We've been doing the mandala in English, and then the first part of the refuge, the first time through in English, so that we all know what it is that we're saying. Because you don't. So do you know the Tibetan?
No, not really.
Okay, so it doesn't matter whether we do it in English or not. Okay. Okay, so we'll go through it in English and then Tibetan. Okay. I suppose I should say this is ACI 11, the Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life, and Class 7. Okay. Here is the great earth filled with the smell of incense, covered with a blanket of flowers. The great mountain, wearing a jewel of the sun and moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it to all of you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha until I achieve enlightenment. By the power of the goodness that I do in giving and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. Sangye Chudam Saki Chognam Janshu Bardu Dakni Kyapsu Chi Daki Chanyangi Pe Sunam Ki Drola Penshir Sangye Dripasho Sangye Chudam Soki Chognam Janshu Bardu Dakni Kyapsu Chi Daki Chanyangi Pe Sunam Ki Drola Penshir Sangye Drupasho. So welcome, Class 7. So our last 3 classes, I believe, were on joyful effort. But this class, we begin meditation. This is the first class on meditation, the perfection of meditation. So we're going to start with a contemplation. The way the book was written is in verses, and so we're moving through these certain verses as contemplations, and then we'll talk about them afterwards. So if you would get comfortable, close your eyes. I will read the verse and we'll take a minute or something to think about it, and then we'll talk about it. So contemplation 1 is on quietude. Once you've developed your practice of effort in the way described above, then place your mind in single-pointedness. A person whose mind is in a state of constantly wandering lives his life in the jaws of mental afflictions. This constant wandering never occurs with those who remain in isolation of body and mind. Okay. This is the one night I didn't bring water, and now I'm going to cough. Would you? Thank you so much. She'll be back in just a minute. That'd be great.
It's not so.
So we're going to talk about, you know, how important it is to go into retreat, which is something you've just done, right? For 3 weeks. That's really wonderful. Yeah. So maybe at some point you can tell us some of the benefits you experienced in doing that, if you're up for it. Let's see. So I don't want Marianne to miss anything while she gets me water. So maybe we should take a moment and again, just close our eyes. You know? Those of you who are here or have heard the other classes, we could think some more about joyful effort and how important it is to have commitment and to really enjoy doing good things for other people. And to think more about emptiness and karma, which is why we do most of the practices that we do. That concept that nothing is self-existent. Everything that we perceive is a combination of our perceptions. It doesn't exist on its own without our perceptions. Thank you. Okay. So let me just read through it one more time, since we were interrupted. Once you've developed your practice of effort in the way described above, then place your mind in single-pointedness. A person whose mind is in a state of constant wandering lives his life in the jaws of mental afflictions. This constant wandering never occurs with those who remain in isolation of body and mind. So single-pointed concentration, what does that mean? They are saying it means to be one-minded, to have one-mindedness. And we can think of different times in our lives where we are so focused on something that time goes by really quickly. We don't realize, you know, that we've just been sitting here for 4 hours because we were so engrossed in what we were doing, right? People like baseball players, you know, they standing there at the bat and their concentration is so intense they can see this ball going at really fast, I don't know how many miles an hour coming so that they can hit it with their bat. You know, these people all have that kind of single-pointed concentration for periods of time. Right? We talked in the last class, you know, children can get so engrossed in something that they're doing that you can't pull them away from it, you know, the computer games, things like that. And my 3-year-old daughter was sitting, playing something at a table when I was visiting my mother, and we were working on dinner. And at one point I said to her, honey, it's time for dinner. You need to go wash your hands, get ready. She said, no, I'm in the middle of this, you know. That's the kind of like joyful effort and single-pointed concentration, right, that we're talking about. And they say that if you can't get that, if your mind is kind of constantly wandering all over the place, it's like you're in the jaws of this big monster, You know, it's like this big monster has you in their jaws, just waiting to chomp down, you know, and the monster is the mental afflictions. You know, if your mind is bouncing from thing to thing, if you're constantly in that state, then you're very susceptible to mental afflictions coming in, right? If you can get to a place where your concentration is more exacting, then to disturb you, you know. You can go through your day, and if you have enough concentration to keep in your mind what your practices are, then you're much less susceptible to those mental afflictions. Right? And they say those mental afflictions are what are going to destroy us, right? Because whenever you have a mental affliction, you're planting the seed in your mind for something negative to happen to you in the future, right? Mental afflictions are anger, jealousy, pride. Most of those things will cause you to do harm to somebody else, right? It will cause you to be nasty to somebody, something like that. And that will bring about more suffering in your future. So they talk about two different kinds of meditation, or two functions of meditation. And one of those is the meditation that you have as you're going about your day. You know, the other is a deep meditation when you're sitting on your cushion. For me, it seemed like, you know, I realized I was calling my time sitting on my cushion practice. That's my practice. And that what it was practice for keeping my mind single pointed during the day. You know, so after a while, you're sitting on your cushion and you're watching your mind and you're getting more and more single pointed and it's getting stronger and stronger. And then as you're moving through your day, you're more awake and you're more aware of what's going on in your mind. Right? And they call the day-long meditation preventative meditation because it's what's going to prevent the negative karmas, right? It's what's going to prevent you from having those mental afflictions, which are creating, you know, the negativity and the suffering of your life. And we spoke in the last class, I think, about how, you know, we can sit on our cushion and we're so good, we actually put aside an hour of time to sit on your cushion and practice. And then you get up off your cushion and you go through your day and you forget all about it. And your mind is drawn here, there, and everywhere. And the mental afflictions just start flowing, you know, and they're not necessarily big ones, like killing someone or robbing a bank. It'll all these little irritating thoughts in your mind as you go through your day that are creating all that negativity and suffering of our lives. Yeah. The second meditation is the deep meditation. So that preventative meditation, you know, the meditation that you're doing all day long. I never even heard that called meditation in the past, but here they're speaking of it as meditation, like keeping your awareness throughout the day, keeping your recollection. We say it's like a prophylactic. Do you guys know prophylactic? Preventative. I think the only time I've heard that word is like for condoms or birth control pills. You know, it's something that's there to prevent something from happening, right? So that keeping your recollection and your awareness throughout the day is a prophylactic to keep you from creating all of those negative karmas. And what you're trying to do is to find a state between the two extremes. And normally we talk about those two extremes when we speak about meditation, right? So it's the extreme of agitation and the other extreme of dullness. right? And what we're seeking when we do single-pointed meditation is to reduce those, both of those, and to find this really sweet spot right in the middle, right? Where you're not getting agitated and you're not sinking down into dullness, right? There's like a bing right there in the middle. That's very sweet. Geshe calls it being bright-eyed and bushy-tailed expression. I don't know if you have it in the other countries, you know, where your mind is clear, you're focused, you're interested in what you're doing, you're awake. When you're in a good movie, right, and you're so engrossed in the movie that you don't even recognize people being around you. I don't know how many times it's happened to me. I've been watching a movie and somebody comes in and starts talking to me, and I don't even know they're talking to me for a few minutes, right? Or you're reading a good book and somebody tries to talk to you, you know? Yeah. You're awake and you're involved. You're like in a very sweet space when you're having that kind of concentration. You're very interested in what you're doing. And when you're in that place, you know, mental afflictions aren't popping into your mind, you know, unless it's not going very well. If you're joyfully doing things and you're helping other people, then there's no room for a mental affliction to come in. And we talked in the other classes about, like, if you don't get enough sleep and you're in a state of dullness, it's much easier for you to get irritated about something, you know. Your mind isn't sharp, you're not clear, you're dull, and it's much easier for any mental afflictions to come in. You can get really crabby around people. So that dullness is a kind of state where you're not having a mental affliction yet, but you've kind of set the stage for it. Geshe said it's like you've taken a chair and set it here and invited mental afflictions in here. Here's your place, you know, come and sit with me. Yeah. And the opposite of that dullness is when you get too many projects going, you know, when your mind is going really quickly thinking about this, that, and the other thing. It's almost a state of agitation already, and just let somebody come in and very sweetly ask you for something, you know, and you're like, ah, you know, I'm busy, can't you see that, you know? So again, if you let yourself get into those places, you know, it's like inviting the mental afflictions in. It's preparing the ground for your guest of mental afflictions, you know, so you want to be very careful about that. The second time of meditation, kind of meditation, they call demolish meditation. To break down, break apart a big building, and they had one of those big cranes with a ball and they're knocking the building down, right? So to demolish is to break apart. And this is the very deep states of meditation. They say that if you really want to get at your belief in self-existent things, you need to get into very deep states of meditation. You know, the walking around during your day meditations are the kind that are going to keep you from having the mental afflictions, keep you from planting the seed, make things, you know, create suffering in your life. But to actually get at the very root of our problem and the very root of our suffering, you have to go into very deep states of meditation. You have to reach shamatha, which we'll be talking about, which is a place where you've, you know, taken that agitation and that dullness and found that sweet spot right in the middle where you're awake and aware. You have to get there, and from there you do vipassana, which most people call vipassana. You start to look into the nature of reality, into the nature of how things exist, into that lack of self-existence of everything. And from those platforms, you can then have the direct perception of emptiness, which is absolutely necessary if you want to reach enlightenment, if you want to get to nirvana and enlightenment, right? You have to have this experience of the direct perception of emptiness. Right? And the deep states of meditation are necessary to get there. So these deep states are where you actually focus on those concepts of dependent origination and emptiness. Right? So you need both of those states of meditation if you're going to get there. You know, you have to create the good karmas. You have to stop creating the negative karmas, which is the preventative meditation, which is every moment of your day being in awareness of what you're doing and how you're creating these things in your life. And then the deep states of meditation, where you get at the very root and you work perception of emptiness. They say eventually you will rip out the foundations of your mental afflictions, which is to misunderstand reality, right? To see things as self-existent. So here they're going to talk about 2 obstacles to reaching that deep state of meditation. And those are the 2 extremes that we've just talked about, right? Agitation, which is thinking about lots of stuff and being distracted by many different things, where your mind is flipping from one object to another. You know, your mind is very busy. Anybody who first sits down to meditate, you know, they have this experience of their mind being incredibly busy. And they will often say, you know, my mind has gotten worse since I sat down to meditate. But what the teachers all say is it hasn't gotten worse. You know, you have just become aware for the first time of what your mind is doing all the time, right? So it's flipping around, there's this monkey mind, and we have to work on calming that down. You know, it's where we're very busy with our lives. And even if we're busy with virtue, you know, even if your mind is thinking about this one and that one, and I got to do this and I got to do that, you know, you're never going to reach those really deep states of meditation. So it's important to get that under control, you know. Then the second obstacle to meditation is the dullness. And the dullness can be really tricky. You know, it starts out as obvious dullness. When I first started meditating, I would sit down to meditate and I would fall asleep. You know, it was like, because I was so worn out from my life, you know. So obvious dullness is that, you know, where you just can't concentrate for one reason or another, you know. And it comes from things like not getting enough sleep, like habitually not having enough sleep. Staying up too late, you know, heavy foods. If you try to meditate after you've eaten a big pizza or something, or after any meal, when you eat too much or you eat real heavy foods, your body gets really sluggish. And if you try to sit down and meditate, it's really hard to keep your mind sharp, you know, to keep yourself awake. And then as it gets more and more subtle, the subtle dullness, you can think you're having a great meditation. You know, you can think, wow, I sat here for a really long time, but you've been subtly spacing out during that period of time. You know, you aren't sharp, you aren't really focused on your object, you know, you are kind of just going, you know. So that's a problem. You know, it's kind of nice. You know, it's way better than going all the time, but you know, it's a problem. Right? And they say it's a very fertile field for mental afflictions. Right? So the state of meditative concentration that we're working towards falls right in between those two extremes. Right? You're not agitated and you're not dull. You've come to that very sweet place right in the middle. And it takes time to get there. You know, it takes a lot of time, years sometimes. And they have this chart of I forget how many steps of meditation, but you know, you start out just going blah, 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 and then falling asleep, you know, and slowly you work yourself into, you can hold your mind on an object for really brief periods of time, and then your mind wanders off, you know, and 5 minutes later you go, wait a minute, I was supposed to be doing this, you know? And it gets easier and easier over time. 9 stages of meditation. Thank you. There was one day in the first period of my doing meditation, you know, where I was kind of getting better at it a little bit. But this one day I sat down on my cushion and my mind went, oh, wait a minute, did you leave the stove on? You know, and I went, did I leave the stove on? Did I forget to turn the stove off? And went, sit here. A few minutes later, oh, I forgot I was supposed to tell somebody this, you know. No, you can tell them afterwards, you know, sit here, you're going to meditate, you know, and this happened like 5 times. And then the next thing I knew, I was walking out the door of the meditation room and I had no idea how I got up off my cushion and went out the door. But I became aware when I reached the door. And at that point, I just laughed. It was like, oh my God, you know, it's that strong. And that was the end of the meditation for the day, you know. So in the beginning, it's this real struggle, you know, because your mind is so wild, but it gets easier and easier. And eventually, when you can reach that point of shamatha, it's very blissful. It's this amazingly blissful spot to be in. But they say you have to be careful because that isn't the goal, you know. You'll get there, but that isn't the goal. That is merely a platform from which you'll do the vipassana, and then reach that place of seeing emptiness directly, which also it's a goal, but it's not the end of the journey. You know, once you reach there, they say you're a stream enterer, you're on the path, you are not going to go to lower realms anymore, but you still have a ways to go before you reach the end. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So the deep meditation is to destroy that base of our mental afflictions, right? The root of all evil. And the root of your mental afflictions by understanding emptiness, you know, and we do a lot of study of what emptiness is. We do a lot of study of karma and emptiness, but until you actually have that experience, you don't really know, you know. So it's a very, very important thing to accomplish. Hi, Luba. Welcome. Have another contemplation. Okay. Well, actually, I'm just repeating the other one, but we're going to talk about the second part more. So, what's your practice of effort in the way described above? Then place your mind in soul pointedness. A person whose mind is in a state of constantly wandering lives his life in the jaws of the mental afflictions. This constant wandering never occurs with those who remain in isolation of body and mind. So now we're going to talk about that second part, right? In order to avoid distraction, you must achieve isolation, both physical and mental. So the physical is to isolate yourself from two things. The first one is kind of your social environment. You know, the people around you who don't support your meditations. You know, the people who want to constantly be going out and doing things, the people who come and talk to you about all of the different things in the world, you know, someone who'll come over and sit and talk for hours with you about things that really don't have a lot of importance. Gossiping about things, people who'll come over and gossip with you, you know, which in general is, you know, in general, it's putting other people down, divisive speech, you know, it's planting seeds for negativity and suffering in your life. You know, people who want to go out to a movie or to a play or to, you know, who are constantly coming, and even though you're supposed to be meditating, you know, they're dragging you away from that on a constant or continuous basis. Or people who don't really believe in what it is that you're doing, who are going to try to distract you, who are going to say, oh, that's not so important. Come on, this is really important. We need to go and do this thing, you know. People who are going to make your mind busy when what you're trying to do is to kind of quiet it down. It's one of the wonderful things about living here at Diamond Mountain is that, one, we're not near any of that stuff, so it's really hard. So once every couple of weeks, it might be, let's go see a movie. But it's not that constant distraction of every night there's something to do, you know. And the people around you are supporting you in your practice. You know, if you allow them, they're going to say to you, you know, oops, we're gossiping, let's not do that, you know, things like that. Or they're going to say, ooh, I wonder where that came from, you know, so that they're constantly in a place of helping you remember to look at your life in a particular way, you know, to look at things with correct worldview. And the more that you hang out with people who don't believe in those things, the more they're going to distract you from your own wanting to focus on things, right? So it's really important to be around people who are supporting you and not pulling you away from things. So it doesn't mean that you don't have a social life, you know, and it doesn't mean that you're not compassionate to people who are in that place, you know, who are constantly distracted or pull you into that. I mean, I look at my Facebook feed, and for the most part, I have a lot of nice people there, but it's also a place where there's a lot of talk about what's going on in the world and how terrible this person is or how terrible that person is, you know. And sometimes I get caught up in that, but I keep myself from sharing those things with anybody else, you know. And as much as I can help it, I just skip over things like that. Mostly I look at what my children are doing in their lives, you know. Keep your mind, you know, away from negativities in that way. I'm trying to think, just today, I looked at Facebook a little bit and there was someone talking about just that. And they said that they have a friend who just stopped all of it. They wouldn't read a newspaper. They stopped reading magazines. You know, they stopped all of that stuff because of all the negativity that was contained there. And they felt that for at least some period of time, they had to clear all of that out of their mind. You know, so now to surround yourself with people who are thinking positively, who are supporting you in practice, hopefully people that have the same worldview, who are really looking into what karma and emptiness is and about where things are coming from in your life. So have a social life, still be nice to people, be nice to the people who are wanting to pull you away, but be aware of what's happening and take some time for yourself and try to slow things down a little bit. Because the more you do that, then when you sit on your cushion, all of those things are going to be popping in your mind. It's going to be very difficult to pull yourself into a place of single-pointed concentration. And I think there comes a time, I know it's happened for me to some extent, when I can be among people who are doing that, poop, 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 and it won't do that to me. I used to, if I watched a scary movie, I would inevitably have a nightmare that night. That doesn't happen to me anymore. I can go out and watch the bang 'em up like Thor thrashing each other left and right, and it doesn't disturb my state of mind. But for a while I couldn't. I had to stay away from it. So just to be aware of that. So you isolate yourself in those ways, that social environment, right? We talk about walking down the street in New York or something, and there are so many different things to draw your attention and to get you involved in this or that, all the store windows, to try to just keep your mind quiet as you go through those places. So the second one of the physical, right? We're talking about physical and mental distractions. So isolating yourself from the world in terms of going into deep retreats from time to time, to take yourself totally away from all of that distraction and to have periods of time where you can really get into deep meditative states. It's hard to do that if you're busy every day. You can try in the morning, spending an hour, in the evening spending an hour, and then you go out into the middle of a busy work day or something and your mind just, it's hard to bring it back down into a focus. So really important to take some time from time to time to just go and be totally by yourself. There are some rules, like your monastery has to be 10 miles from the nearest city, something like that. Here in Bowie, we're 10 miles from the nearest little town that has nothing going on, So it's a very quiet place, you can, I can hear somebody walking up to my house, it's so quiet. I can hear the little animals outside doing their, it's important to be in places like that from time to time and to have a committed period of time to really focus your mind, right? They say you're never going to get into those deeper states of meditation unless you do that. So then there's the mental, right? You need to gain the ability to withdraw your mind into yourself, right? To actually get to a place where you're withdrawn from all the sensory stimulation around you. They say you can get into deep enough state that somebody can walk into the room, they can talk to you and you won't be aware of it. There was a story I heard of somebody's, we talk about Atisha having a tea boy who would serve tea. This was somebody who was serving their master, right? And they walked into the room and they went into a deep state of meditation while they were standing there holding a tray of drinks. And they stayed in that deep state of meditation for an entire day, and then came out of it and went to serve the drinks, So you can get to a place where your meditation can be so deep you're not aware of sensory stimulation around you. So it's necessary to get to where you can pull yourself back from all the distractions of your mind and to stay totally focused internally on your mind. And when they talk about going into these deeper states of meditation, we're going to talk about having an object. They say it needs to be a mental object. Like you can begin with a picture or a statue or something of the Buddha, but you really have to get to where you can create those things in your own mind. And you'll never get to that point of being separate from sensory stimulation if it's an outside object. You have to have it as an internal object, right? An object of the mind. That's why they have you visualizing, right? Because you want to be totally internal. To get to the core of your mind, it says. Okay, contemplation. 2, attachment to the world. So again, if you'll sit and close your eyes and listen. People are unable to give up the world because of their attachment and craving for material gain and the like.
What number of contemplation?
Contemplation 2, which is called attachment to the world. So we're going to talk about 2 types of attachment: inner attachment and outer attachment. They say this emotion of attachment ruins your meditation. We're all attached to sense objects. We're attached to friends and relatives. And we are attached to ourselves, of ourself, to me and mine. Our outer distractions or attachments are to things like food, sex, money, praise, those things. We're all like trying to make money, or we're thinking about food all the time. What am I going to make for dinner? Geshe-la talks about that all the time, that when he starts to go into meditation, one of the things that would carry him away was, what am I going to have for lunch? It's like we spend a lot of time thinking about these things. And we've all got our things. Some of us really like to cook, and so we're constantly thinking about what meals we can prepare and how we can make it different, and how all the subtle flavors go together to make something happen. Others are interested in photography. If I use this filter or that filter or different settings, some of us are into making money. Geshe-la says money, you start when you're 20 and you think about it constantly, and for like 30 years, it's the focus of your life. Every moment is like, how am I going to build this empire? How am I going to make money? And if you're attached to those things, it's going to ruin your meditation. How are you going to quiet that mind, and how are you going to go deep inside if there's this constant desire for all of those things outside? Relationship, sex, you get very caught up in that. And it's really nice to have those things. It's not like you shouldn't have a relationship, have a car, or you shouldn't have money. We all need to work to make a living for ourselves. It's a question of how attached you are, and how much of a distraction it is, and how much you can't let go of it. I knew people who couldn't go out of the house without their makeup. They would fall apart if they couldn't have their makeup on. And how much are we willing to hurt ourselves chasing after it? I think we've all heard of relationships that were ruined because the husband or the wife was so focused on making money that they had no time for their family, that kind of thing. So we're hurting ourselves and we're hurting others in order to achieve these goals. That's being too attached. We're concerned about becoming famous, or we're concerned about people praising us. Like I had 50 views for my first class. How many views did you have for your class? That kind of thing. Much to pity me. I think it's further along in my notes, but Geshe talked about this headhunter. I forget, I think that's what they call them. This person, you would go to them to find jobs, and they would, introduce you to various companies. And the headhunter said that many, many people would be willing to take a position where they were making less money if it meant that they could have prestige, if they had a title that was more, which engendered more respect. People respected them more because of this title. So they were more concerned about getting praise, of having pride and getting praise than they were about making money, So how important is that to you? What will you do in order to be in that position? In the dog-eat-dog world of corporate America, are you willing to undercut this other person in your office in order to get the raise or in order to get the next position that they're competing with you for? How much is it causing you to hurt other people and to create negativities? Distractions, of which we all have, and the distraction. Basically, that attachment to this idea of a self. Which he calls the self-nature of me. We all have this idea of who I am, and we talked about this in the last class a little bit too, right? We have a concept of ourselves as this or as that, and we think it's very solid. I'm a kind person, I'm a generous person, I'm a smart person, all of those things, and we're very attached to that concept of ourselves. So if somebody comes along and they say something else, we get upset about it, we think they've dissed us. They come along and they say maybe we should have done something differently. We get upset about that because we think they're challenging our competency to do our job, because we're attached to this concept of self, right? And we have to, as Dharma practitioners, think about where did that self come from? Is this a solid self that exists out there separate from my projections? Separate from my projections? Am I intelligent because I'm intelligent? Or am I intelligent because I have helped other people to understand things, and therefore that's what's manifesting in my being is an ability to understand? Am I beautiful because I'm beautiful and because I take care of my skin and I do my hair in just the right way and I'm really good at makeup? Is that what makes my beauty? Or am I beautiful because I have been generous with people in the past? I have created a karma for a physical beauty, Am I sweet and generous because I just am, because my mother was that way and she taught me well? Or generous because I have helped other people, and that has come back to me manifesting as this idea of a self. That's what we have to think about. That's what we have to look about. So, Rianne exists.
No.
Yeah. She's sitting right there. Yeah, she's sitting right there. She exists, yeah. But does she exist self-existently? You know, is she there? Am I perceiving Marianne in a particular way existing out there because she is that way? Or am I perceiving her in that way because of the karmas that I have planted in my mind stream, which are now manifesting as this projection of Marianne? You know, does Marianne exist out there and we are all perceiving her in exactly the same way, so that there is a solid Marianne the way she thinks of herself? Or is there 4 different Mariannes in this room because each of us are perceiving a different Marianne? You know, right? And when you conceive of yourself in such a way, you know, is that a solid, this is me, or is it simply how I am projecting myself to myself and everybody else sees me in a different way? So they say that that's one of the problems, right? All of our outer distractions are more minor problems compared to this belief in a self-existent self, right? Which is a really big distraction. You know, it keeps us unkind to other people. We attach to who we are, that, you know, to give something to somebody, I'm losing something. It's me that's important, right? And I'm losing something when I give it away. You know, it keeps you creating negativities because you're believing in the self, right? So Marianne obviously exists, Regina exists, you know, but they exist to me as a projection of my mind, right? The Marianne I'm experiencing is a projection of my own mind, right? I'm seeing a little picture. I'm not seeing what's really out there. I'm seeing a little picture. And it's exactly the same as my concept of myself, right? It's a concept that I'm projecting, right? It doesn't exist solidly. So then, as long as I believe in this self-existent self, it's going to be really difficult, you know. It says, I will have desire, and that desire will ruin my meditation. Can't go deeply inside if you're constantly desiring, right? You'll never get to that point of experiencing emptiness unless you can let go of all of it, you know. So that's the me, and then there's the mine, everything that's mine, right? Which is my hand and my arm, my vest, my toes, my fingernails that I cut, my hair that I spend hours on. You can see that I do, right? Yeah. And so, again, we have a lot of mental afflictions that arise around that, right? If you think about upset today, yesterday, maybe there are people here who weren't upset today at all. You know, yesterday, the day before. Think about how many times you were upset and what those had to do with. You know, was it that someone disagreed with your opinion? Was it that someone that made you think they thought you were incompetent? You know, probably many of them, if not most of them, were because of this belief in a self-existent me. And mine, you know, my opinion they didn't agree with. Floor, you know, they bumped into my arm, you know, all of those things. So they say in order to really get at that deep belief in self-existent, you have to go into these really deep states of meditation, and you have to isolate yourself in order to do that. You know, you have to take that time away from your normal life and allow yourself to settle deeper and deeper and deeper. Some experience of how taking this 3 weeks, allowed you to go deeper. like little increments of deeper and deeper and deeper. Except those times when going deeper caused these agitations to arise, memories to arise, and so on. But you go deeper, and that happens, and you go deeper, and that happens, and you go deeper. And you can clear some of those things from your being by doing that. Times I had, like it happens, it's part of retreat, that you go into retreat and then memories arise and these agitations arise, and then you work with that and you settle. And I've had times happen when something has arisen and I have worked with it and settled, and then come out of the meditations, and a few days later or a week later in life, something arises which would have caused a mental affliction to arise, and it doesn't. It's like I worked on that thing and it's gone. It's a cessation of a mental affliction, right? Someone could come up to you and say something that always got you upset, and you just don't get upset about it anymore. And it's like shocking on someone when you go, whoa, did that just happen and I didn't get upset? Wow, that's really wonderful, you know. And it got me thinking, imagine what it would be like if I didn't get upset about anything, you know. Because generally it's one little thing that got cleared, and then another thing happens and you're upset about that. But those experiences are what kept me going. And that's what keeps me to see that it's really worth it. And deep meditation there. Anybody take a break? 3, stopping attachment. You want to type that in first? Okay. Understand first the fact that vision, married close to quietude, destroys the mental afflictions. Begin then by seeking quietude. Attachment. Understand first. Vision married close to quietude destroys the mental afflictions. Begin then by seeking quietude. It in turn is achieved by little attachment for this world. The bliss of losing attachment. So they say you must reach a point where you combine the highest form of meditation with the highest form of wisdom. Okay. So here they call the highest form of meditation Shine or Shamatha. Shi means peace in Tibetan, and Ne means to stay. So it's to stay in peace. So again, you're taking that agitation and bringing it down, and you're taking the dullness and bringing it up, and finding that spot where there's quietude, not distraction, not dullness, just quietude. And they say it's incredibly blissful. And if you meditate enough, you'll begin to get that even being excited about something good is a form of agitation, and that when you come to that place of perfect contentment, it's more blissful than any exciting good thing that ever happens, right? It's this perfect contentment, perfect peace. So Geshe says it's been translated as calm abiding, and he doesn't like that translation. But I once got a letter in the mail, and it was from the land of calm abiding, and my heart just went, ah. It was like, oh, I want to be there, But Geshe says that it's not the goal to be peaceful, So he says, he calls it quietude. He translates it as quietude. And he said it's that place between being like hyperactive and being dull, right? The state of peace between those two. You have a place if you want to see emptiness directly, right? You have to get to a platform where it's possible to see emptiness directly. And it's that place of quietude in between agitation and dullness. He says, when you see emptiness directly, all samsara begins to end for you at that point. And he says this is the primary and perhaps the only important use of meditation. Meditation isn't about being calm. It's not about being quiet even. It's about getting to a place where you can see emptiness directly and to understand the nature of reality. Once you get there, you can begin to do away with all the suffering and all the negativities. I mean, we're working on that now, slowly working on it. Once you actually see the true nature of reality, it becomes so much easier, right? He calls it the conveyor belt, right? Once you're there, you're called a stream enterer. It's like now you're in a stream that will take you inevitably to nirvana and then enlightenment, right? Nirvana is the permanent cessation of all of your mental afflictions, right? And then enlightenment beyond that is a point where you can be omniscient. You see all things in all times, and you can emanate bodies, right, to help all beings everywhere. So incredibly important to get to that point where you see it directly. Be in a place where then, because you're not bothered, you could actually help them. They're bothered, you're not. You can see what might help them, right? To never have any upset. I mean, I can't imagine what bliss that would be, right? Never any upset. Right? So again, to be calm while you're on your deathbed and dying, but is that the goal? To be calm while they take you to the nursing home, to be calm when you're in the hospital suffering, is that the goal? Or is the goal to get beyond that kind of suffering? To get to where you have created the karmas that suffering just doesn't occur anymore. Those mental afflictions just don't arise anymore. That's the goal. And that goal is achieved by seeing emptiness directly and truly understanding the nature of reality, right? Truly understanding how these things are created in your life. So you need those deep states of meditation. You need to reach shamatha. You need to see emptiness directly. Then your body will begin to change, your mind will change incredibly, and the whole world will change. So the definition of shamatha?
Single-pointedness, single-mindedness, full of external bliss due to practice ease based on object.
Yeah. So she just gave the definition of shamatha. I think most of the people online can't hear you. They can sort of hear you, but only if you talk really loud. So the people that are closer can be heard, but the people further away can't. Shamatha, that single-mindedness, which is infused with the extraordinary bliss of practiced ease due to a deep single-pointed concentration on its object. So probably you didn't infused. Infused is when it becomes like a part of your very being, right? It's been like, how would you use infused in a different way?
Infusion.
Yeah, when you put something into it's becoming a part of every aspect of your being, right? Being absorbed. Yeah. Somehow I feel like infused is from the outside and absorbed is like if you absorb, somebody is infusing and you're absorbing. I'm not sure that that's, how about extraordinary? Extraordinary bliss is like bliss greater than you could possibly imagine, greater than any bliss you have experienced. And practiced ease is you practice so much that it becomes so, you don't even have to think about it, right? So that single-mindedness, which is infused with the extraordinary bliss of practiced ease due to deep single-pointed concentration on its object. An object that, right, you are that there's this ease, which your concentration then is infused with extraordinary bliss, right? So it's, you get to that point where it's just so incredibly blissful, right? You're not being drawn off in any direction, you're just right here, and it's incredibly blissful. So here it's implied in this, your body and your mind point, you've practiced, sit down on your cushion and bing, you know, you don't have to think about it, you don't have to practice, you know, you have that control that you just sit and it happens. Your body can sit there for hours, your mind can stay single pointed for hours. And there is that physical well-being and happiness. So then the definition of Vipassana.
Wisdom.
Yeah.
She's full of extraordinary bliss due to practice ease. Power of analysis
Of your object. Yeah. So Vipassana, it's hard to remember over a long period of time, which is partly why they go over it and over it and over it in all the different classes. You know, you hear this numerous times. So Vipassana, that wisdom, which is infused with the extraordinary bliss of practiced ease by the power of analysis of its object, all based upon the foundation of quiet. So it is specialist said about which comes first, but that he's decided, or many people agree, that first you get that basis of quietude. You bring your mind to a point where it's still. And from that platform, you can then begin analysis, right? So you take things as your object of analysis. So we will talk some about what those different things are. But you must have that platform of shamatha in order for your mind to be still enough that you can clearly focus on an object and analyze it, see it for what it really is. There are 3 different types of mental images of meditations. The first meditation, so you've gotten your mind to a point where you can concentrate. So now you take a mental image, you take an object to focus upon, right? And they say that this object should be a holy object. Like you don't really want to focus on your boyfriend or your girlfriend for lunch or something like that, but you want to pick a holy object, right? And this is where you really want that object to be a mental consciousness. You don't want to be sitting there staring at a statue, because you need to come within your own mind and you need to be able to pull yourself away from the sensory stimulations. Object to have a picture in the beginning which helps you to focus, that's fine for a while, but you really want to get to the point where you can see those images internally, right? The object can be a picture of your Lama, it can be a holy being, it can be someone you really respect. Eventually you want to take as your object things like karma and emptiness. You want to take as your object dependent origination. And this is where the different types of meditation come in. Right? To pick an object. The second one is to solve a problem. So your object, right? To go into analysis of an object. If you do the analysis, there are a series of 4 steps that you can use. You can do these mental exercises with your object. Gyaltsab Je, who was one of the main students of Gyaltsab. So those 4 stages of analysis would be to visualize that object as we normally see it, which can be without any kind of analysis of it at all. I see a camera, I don't go into much analysis about whether it's really there or not. I don't think about karma and emptiness very often when I look at it. Most people in the world, they just see it and it just is. Your second stage would be to see it as self-existent. Right? And in the Lion's Dance meditation we've recently been given, we go through a couple of these steps where we see it as self-existent. And what would that mean? And you think about what that would mean if it were self-existent. It would have nothing to do with me perceiving it, right? It just exists out there, and go through all of these things we've talked about, like, does the eye actually see Regina, or does the eye pick up light and color, and that hits the back of the retina, and that's sent to the brain, and then the mind, which works through the brain, takes it and analyzes it and comes up with, Regina or pen or whatever. Is it Regina or, yeah, close enough? Regina? Regina. Okay. Regina. No problem. Okay, I'll try. Regina.
No, you don't.
Okay. All right, so look at this, see it as self-existent, see it as existing out there separate from me, and what that was exist out there separate from my perceiving it. Its existence, for me, depends on my perceiving it. And that perceiving of it comes from seeds that I've planted in the past, which causes my mind to see it, to analyze it in a particular way, right? So it's a mental image based on what my mind is doing, right? So we've gone through stage 1, the way everybody normally sees it. Stage 2, see it as dependently originate. See it as self-existent. Third, see it as dependently originating. The fourth one, imagine what it would be like if the self-existent aspect was never there at all. Right? So that's where, you've seen it as self-existent, recognize that that isn't there, never was there, never would be there, that it can't possibly exist like that, right? And if you see it that way, and you take that away, you're left with emptiness, right? So those are the analysis that you would do if you were doing the analytical meditation. So again, we've developed shamatha, we've gotten to that place of quietude, and then we can do these 3 meditations, right? Meditation where you take an object as a mental image, a meditation where you solve a problem, you think about something as a problem and you solve it, where we go through these 4 steps of analysis. So in review, shamatha is that ability to meditate really deeply. And you need to reach that state in order to see emptiness directly. It's a place where you're in command of your body and your mind. Right? It's an extremely pleasant experience, which means it's a place that many people might stop because you just want to stay in that pleasant experience, right? So we have to remember that it's a tool. It's not the goal, but it's a tool for us to analyze things and to reach emptiness, to see emptiness directly. Considered a spiritual achievement. It is, but it's not our deepest spiritual achievement. I think if Scott there, it would be like, yeah. But it's not the goal, it's not the end, right? I think it says that there's a Bodhisattva vow, not to get attached states. Mm-hmm. You can still get old and die, you can still have mental afflictions. I was walking past the temple one day, and by the time I got to the door, this person came out and he got angry with me. He said, I was just in a deep state of meditation and your footsteps walking past here, disturbed me, popped me right out of it. Don't you know better than to do that? And I thought, really? A deep state of meditation, huh? Okay. So yeah, you could get into a blissful state of meditation and still immediately afterwards have mental afflictions. It's not the goal, right? So you have to use it for something, use it to go beyond that, right? And that's where Vipassana comes in, right? This is where we analyze the nature of reality, right? We take objects and we analyze them in order to understand yourself to the point where your mind can just flip over into that experience. You get closer and closer and closer. So anybody need a break? Still doing okay?
How long it takes?
We're probably going to get to the place where I didn't go any further soon. Time, okay. So this is where he goes into the idea that there's a very specific meditative state that you have to reach in order to see emptiness directly, right? I remember years ago hearing that there were like 4 stages of the formless realm, and then there's like 4 stages of form realm and 4 stages of formless realm. And I thought, whoa, I have to think about all of that. We have to get to those places. But here they teach that, you can get into those realms, but that isn't going to help you. What you need to do is reach the first level, even the preliminary stage of the first level of the formless realm. And that is the only place of the form realm. And that is the only place where you'll be able to see emptiness directly, right? So there are all kinds of meditations that you can do and all kinds of karmas that you can create that will take you to those other realms. And those are supposedly quite blissful realms, but they're not going to get you where you need to go.
Sorry, first level of formless realm.
First level form realm. Yeah. Corrected me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the form realm they call a kind of a God realm. And they say if you meditate where you're just focusing on your breath, it's going to take you to one of those realms, right? Or if you just try to not think about things, to blank out your mind. I've done some of these meditations. They're not the only meditations that I've done, but meditations where you watch your mind, and anytime thoughts arise, you bring yourself back and you use the breath as the foundation for that. Somebody didn't turn off their cell phone before class. Oh, well, it's because it's my birthday, so my daughter's calling me. So, if you blank out your mind and just not think about things, if all you do is focus on your breath, right? Right, which is a lot like a realm. You don't have a body, or you have a light body. I'm not really sure about, yeah.
Form realm,
You have a body, you have a body or Wonder Woman or something, ever imagine, right? I thought that metaphor didn't work very good, because if you're Thor or Wonder Woman or Iron Man, you're really working to save the world. So you've got to be creating good karma. But they say in the form realm, you're just using up all of your good karma, right? And that you're basically going to go directly to the hell realms after that. Same with the formless realm. And that really it's just a waste of time that you get to these places and you can be very blissful and wonderful, but you're not really understanding the nature of reality. You're not getting to that concept of no self-existent anything, karma and emptiness. You can't have the direct perception of emptiness. So you use up all your good karma, go directly to hell, and start all over again, right? So what you really want to do is get to this one platform, the preliminary stage of the first form realm, where you can see emptiness directly. And that's why it's very important to take holy objects as an object, to do the analysis. The level is called me chokmate, which is no lack of time. Level of the form. Yeah. They use attraction for physical objects, for sense objects, desire for food, sex, music. In some ways, I have already overcome desire for food, I get hungry, and then I have a desire for food. I have no desire to make food or clean the dishes or any of that, but I still am hungry. Right? Reach that higher level. At certain levels, you lose the ability to smell. You start sensory experiences, right? That some people will mistake this for nirvana, this state for nirvana. But again, you can come right out of that state, have not done away with the root for this. Have the experience of emptiness, the direct perception of emptiness. Out of that sense of coming down out of a higher realm. Like you have just been in this very expansive state, and now you're back to this body, this heavy body, this state of mind. So sometimes this feels very far away. We talked about that a lot when we were talking about joyful effort, that it can seem so far away that we don't think we can ever get there. And especially if you are in those beginning stages and you sit down and your mind just is so wild that to pull it in seems practically impossible, But it isn't impossible. You begin gradually, you work with these things. You stop creating the negative karmas, you do all of those good things, create the good karmas, which will help you understand more. It will help you control your mind more. I was thinking about the divisive speech when I did that experiment with divisive speech, and I got to the point where I was out and there was a car accident and I was stuck in traffic, and I wanted to tell people when I got back, misery loves company. And I realized that if I did that, I would be disturbing other people's minds, right? I would be bringing negativity into other people's minds, and that I would be creating the karma for a disturbed mind myself. So if I want to get into very deep states of meditation, you have to stop creating those kinds of karmas. You stop the negativities, you do the things, you help people understand, you help people's minds be calm. If they come to you in an agitated state, you do what you can to calm them down. You help solve the problem so that and then your meditations will get stronger. Your ability to quiet your mind will get stronger. It's not impossible. We can do it. And it's really nice, when you begin to be able to do these things. It's really nice. So I think we'll end the class there. Again, don't push yourself too hard. You do yourself and then go slow, step by step. class, but we'll do it. Okay. Thank you all so much. I didn't write down what the meditation was. Not actually finished. We can still meditate in emptiness. You know, we can meditate on existent and what isn't. You know, we can think about the different kinds of meditations. So let's do the mandala in Tibetan, since we already did it in English. Dedication in English. Sashi Puki Jukshin Meto Trang Vira Blinshin Yane Yampadi Sangye Shindu Mikte Vargi Drokun Namdang Shina Drupashu Idam Gururat Namandala Kamyataya. By the goodness of what I have just done, may all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the two ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom make. And then for each one of us to do a dedication that is personal to us, to think of something in your life you would like to dedicate the goodness we have just created.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys. I hope your meditation is wonderful. Bye, everybody online is there. We're recording the classes, so people might be watching online.